10 Forgotten Queens, who changed history in silence. History often remembers kings, warriors, and famous leaders, but many queens have been forgotten over time. Some ruled quietly, others influenced decisions behind the scenes, and many shaped the future without receiving credit. These women showed strength, intelligence, and courage, even when they were not in the spotlight. Their actions helped guide kingdoms, protect people, and change important events. Because men often wrote records, their stories were not always fully told. Today, historians are rediscovering these powerful women and giving them the attention they deserve. Here are 10 forgotten queens who changed history in silence.
In the 1st century BC, as the shadows of the Roman Empire stretched across Egypt, Rome encountered a fierce and unyielding adversary to the south. This was the kingdom of Kush, ruled by a powerful and visionary leader, Queen Amenirenas, known to Roman historians as a Candake, or Queen Regnant. Amenirenas was a monarch of remarkable resolve, distinguished in battle and fierce in the defense of her homeland. When Roman forces commanded by Gaius Petronius advanced toward Kush, seeking to impose heavy tributes and expand their imperial grip, Amenirenas did not submit. Instead, she led her armies northward in a bold, preemptive strike, capturing Roman forts and seizing bronze statues of Emperor Augustus. Her tactical brilliance and the relentless resistance of her warriors forced the mighty Roman Empire into a prolonged conflict. Ultimately, Rome was compelled to negotiate, signing a peace treaty that exempted Kush from tributes and secured its sovereignty. Queen Amenirenas successfully defended her borders, ensuring that her kingdom remained independent and cementing her legacy as one of antiquity's greatest warrior queens.
In the 7th century, during a period of intense conflict known as the Three Kingdoms era, a remarkable leader ascended the throne of Silla, marking a historic milestone as the kingdom's first reigning queen. This was Queen Seondeok, a monarch whose legacy would be defined not by the might of her armies, but by the extraordinary power of her intellect and wisdom. Navigating a male-dominated political landscape and constant threats from rival kingdoms, Seondeok relied on diplomacy, strategic alliances, and a deep understanding of statecraft to preserve her nation's sovereignty. She recognized that true strength lay in the prosperity and unity of her people, heavily investing in Buddhism to culturally bind the kingdom and fostering a renaissance of science and the arts. Her visionary leadership is immortalized in the construction of Kyemsyangde, one of the world's oldest surviving astronomical observatories, built to aid her people in agriculture. Queen Seondeok's reign laid the essential cultural and political foundations that would ultimately enable Silla to unify the Korean peninsula, cementing her place in history as a sovereign of unparalleled intelligence and enduring foresight.
In the 5th century BCE, as the vast Persian Empire collided with the independent city-states of Greece, one of the ancient world's most formidable naval strategists emerged from the city of Halicarnassus. This was Queen Artemisia I, a monarch who ruled with absolute authority and commanded her own fleet in the Greco-Persian Wars. Unlike many rulers of her era, Artemisia did not merely fund or watch her navy from afar. She sailed into the heart of conflict, personally commanding 5 elite warships alongside the forces of the Persian King of Kings, Xerxes I. At the historic Battle of Salamis, her tactical brilliance and fierce determination became legendary. Recognizing her unparalleled sharp wit and martial prowess, Xerxes valued her counsel above that of his seasoned generals, famously remarking that his men had become women, and his women men. Though fighting on the losing side of the grand campaign, Artemisia's cunning maneuvers allowed her fleet to survive the chaotic naval clash intact. She returned home with her sovereignty secured, cementing her legacy in history not only as a powerful queen, but as one of the earliest and most capable female naval commanders known to the ancient world.
In the late 12th century, amidst the rugged peaks and fertile valleys of the Caucasus, a remarkable monarch ascended the throne to guide her nation into its most glorious era. This was King Tamar of Georgia, a title she held as supreme ruler to signify her absolute sovereign power. Inheriting a kingdom surrounded by powerful rivals, Tamar defied the expectations of her time, transforming Georgia into a dominant imperial power. Through brilliant military campaigns and strategic diplomacy, she defended her borders and vastly expanded her realm, stretching her influence from the Black Sea to the Caspian. Yet, Tamar's legacy was defined as much by peace as it was by conquest. She brought unprecedented political stability and economic prosperity to her people, fostering a cultural renaissance where literature, architecture, and the arts flourished under her royal patronage. Her reign became known as the Golden Age of Georgia, a period of unmatched unity and strength. By the time her rule concluded, Tamar had secured her place in history, not just as a powerful conqueror, but as a wise and beloved protector who shaped the medieval world and defined the identity of her nation for centuries to come.
In the early 17th century, as European powers encroached upon the shores of southwest Africa, a brilliant strategist and diplomat arose to defend her homeland against the tides of foreign conquest. This was Queen Nzinga of the kingdoms of Ndongo and Matamba, located in modern-day Angola. Faced with the relentless expansion of Portuguese colonizers who sought to control the region and exploit its people, Nzinga refused to back down. Armed with exceptional political intelligence and an unyielding will, she masterfully navigated complex negotiations, famously demanding equal status with European governors. When diplomacy alone could not secure her borders, she transformed herself into a fierce military commander, forged strategic alliances with rival factions, and led her armies directly into guerrilla warfare. For decades, her tactical brilliance successfully stalled the Portuguese advance and provided a safe haven for those fleeing captivity. Queen Nzinga's fierce resistance and unwavering devotion to her sovereignty preserved the independence of her realm throughout her lifetime, cementing her legacy as a monumental symbol of African freedom and an enduring inspiration for generations to come.
In the 12th century, amidst the shifting rivalries of medieval Europe, one extraordinary woman rose to hold unparalleled power across the continent. This was Eleanor of Aquitaine, a brilliant, wealthy, and independent duchess who would achieve the historic distinction of becoming queen to two different rival empires. Inheriting the massive Duchy of Aquitaine as a young woman, she first ascended the throne as Queen of France through her marriage to King Louis VII, even traveling alongside French knights during the Second Crusade. When that union dissolved, she masterfully secured her freedom and wealth, marrying Henry Plantagenet and becoming Queen of England. Together, they forged an expansive empire that stretched from the borders of Scotland to the Pyrenees. Eleanor was not merely a symbol of royalty. She was a brilliant political strategist, ruling England as regent during the absences of her husband and her legendary son, Richard the Lionheart. Throughout her long and turbulent life, she remained a central architect of European politics, using her immense wealth, sharp intellect, and diplomatic skill to shape the fates of kingdoms and cement her legacy as the dominant queen of the High Middle Ages. In the 15th century BCE, during the height of the 18th dynasty, a visionary leader ascended the throne of Egypt, achieving the rare and monumental distinction of ruling not merely as a queen, but as a full male pharaoh. This was Hatshepsut, a monarch of extraordinary political intelligence who chose to define her historic reign by the wealth of her achievements rather than the casualties of war, navigating a traditional society by adopting the full regalia of kingship. She diverted Egypt's immense resources away from foreign conquest and toward domestic prosperity. Hatshepsut masterfully revitalized long-dormant commerce, famously launching a legendary maritime expedition to the distant land of Punt, which returned with ships laden with gold, ivory, and precious myrrh trees. She transformed this newly won economic wealth into an unprecedented architectural renaissance, commissioning massive obelisks and her iconic, terraced mortuary temple at Gizeh. By prioritizing trade, infrastructure, and economic stability, Hatshepsut ushered in a golden age of peace and affluence, securing her legacy as one of the most successful and innovative sovereigns in ancient Egyptian history. In the early 19th century, As Western empires aggressively expanded across the Indian Ocean, a fierce and uncompromising monarch ascended the throne of Madagascar, determined to halt the advance of foreign conquest. This was Queen Ranavalona I, a sovereign whose 33-year reign would be defined by an unyielding commitment to her nation's absolute independence. Recognizing that European trade, education, and religion were often the vanguard of colonization, Ranavalona took decisive action to sever ties with the West. She expelled European merchants and missionaries, restricted foreign technology, and pushed back against the spread of Christianity to protect traditional Malagasy culture and political structures. When British and French forces attempted to impose their will through military intimidation, her armies successfully repelled their coastal attacks, forcing the foreign fleets to withdraw. Ranavalona heavily focused on domestic self-reliance, utilizing local resources to sustain her military and economy, though her isolationist policies and iron-fisted rule brought internal hardship. Queen Ranavalona successfully defended her borders and preserved Madagascar's sovereignty during the height of the scramble for Africa, cementing her legacy as a formidable barrier against Western imperialism. In the 6th century BCE, across the vast and untamed steppes of Central Asia, a legendary confederation of nomadic warriors stood directly in the path of the world's most aggressive empire. This was the territory of the Massagetæ, a powerful Scythian people ruled by their formidable queen, Tomyris. When Cyrus the Great, the seemingly unstoppable founder of the Persian Achaemenid Empire, marched his massive armies eastward to conquer her lands, he sought to absorb her realm through both deceptive marriage proposals and military force. Tomyris explicitly warned the Persian king to content himself with ruling his own kingdom. But after a treacherous ambush resulted in the capture and tragic death of her son, her diplomatic patience turned to absolute fury. Rallying her horse archers and fierce warriors, she personally led her army into a colossal, chaotic clash that historians describe as one of the bloodiest battles of the ancient world. Through brilliant tactics and relentless ferocity, Tomyris's forces completely overwhelmed the Persian vanguard, killing Cyrus the Great on the battlefield and decimating his army. By fulfilling her vow to defeat the Conqueror, Queen Tomyris successfully preserved the independence of her people, cementing her legacy as an indomitable protector and one of antiquity's greatest warrior queens. In the 1st century CE, as the Roman Empire relentlessly expanded its borders into the misty landscapes of ancient Britain, it encountered a spirit of resistance that would shake the foundations of imperial rule. This defiance was embodied by Boudica, the formidable queen of the Iceni tribe. Following the death of her husband, Roman administrators broke their treaties, brutally assaulted her family, and stripped her people of their lands and nobility. Driven by an unyielding quest for justice and freedom, Boudica did not submit. Instead, she united rival Celtic tribes into a massive, fierce coalition. With tactical ferocity, she led her warriors in a devastating rebellion, marching upon major Roman strongholds, including Camulodunum and Londinium, leaving the cities in ashes and forcing the imperial legions into a desperate defense. Though her uprising was ultimately crushed in a final, brutal battle against the tactical machinery of Rome, Boudica's fierce defiance captured the imagination of history. She successfully struck terror into the heart of an empire, cementing her legacy not as a conquered subject, but as Britain's iconic warrior queen and an eternal symbol of resistance against tyranny.